Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness. Welcome back to the Boundless Authenticity podcast. My guest today is Linda Schiller, a psychotherapist, consultant, and dream worker. By integrating traditional therapeutic styles and techniques with expressive energy psychology and body-based modalities, Linda is able to provide support for healing at all levels of the self, mind, body, heart, and spirit. Her philosophy of treatment incorporates both deep healing at the source and practical coaching for daily life issues and dilemmas. Linda works from a psycho-spiritual and body-mind orientation. Potential clients can expect an individualized approach to their needs and to be met with warmth, respect, and a wide range of therapeutic options available to best help them reach their treatment goals. Linda also works deeply with Dreamwork and offers a group dream circle, individual consultation, and training for professionals on working with dreams. Linda is the author of the books Modern Dreamwork, New Tools for Decoding Your Soul's Wisdom, and PTSDreams. Transform your nightmares from trauma through Healing Dreamwork, which we are going to discuss today. You can find Linda at www.lindayaelschiller.com. Let me spell that for you. LindaYaelSchiller. So Linda, how's it going?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Jahan?
I am doing great. It's fantastic to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great. So tell everybody what you do and let's unpack some ideas around that.
All right. So I am an integrative psychotherapist. I have been doing that for going on 40 years. And one of my main interests over the years has been dream work. And I've written a couple of books on dream work. The recent one that I think we're probably going to mostly talk about is PTSDreams. And in addition to many other areas that I've worked with as a therapist over the years, I've done a lot of work with trauma treatment. So this book is sort of like a blending of the two main focuses of my professional life, which is helping people from an integrated body, mind, spirit perspective and healing from whatever brings them into their therapy. And then my interest and fascination with dream work for a very long time. And the first book I wrote was really focused on dream work itself. It's called Modern Dreamwork. And then this one came out sooner than I expected because I wasn't planning on writing another book quite so soon. And then we had the pandemic and we kind of got into a worldwide trauma situation. So I thought, you know what? I need to get this out sooner rather than later. So it came out this September.
Yeah, that's great. I think during the pandemic, a lot of people were left to their own devices and had to face themselves in a lot of ways. And so they started paying attention to their dreams, you know?
Yeah. There's actually been a lot of information that has been collected with colleagues of mine, collecting people's dreams and nightmares over the couple of years since the pandemic that have been collected worldwide, and people have been just really reporting the secondary pandemic of nightmares during the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I've spoken with Teresa Chung about this, but I could as well ask you the same question. Does that have anything to do with the collective consciousness?
Well, I think yes and no, right? So Carl Jung tuned us in, if you will, to the fact that we have an individual consciousness within the confines of our physical bodies, and then postulated also that we have a collective consciousness, which is sort of, to use a sci-fi term, like a mind meld with everyone on the planet. So we resonate at an energetic level and at an unconscious level with every other human being and probably non-human beings as well, that we share this space with. So I think there are several reasons why this is happening. And one is that we are tuned into each other's energies in this collective unconscious. But also in this era of technology, we're all connected in a way that we never were before the last couple of decades. So we can turn on any device and find out what's going on in any other part of the world and resonate with sound and picture and voice to everything that people are dealing with, not only in America or Barbados, but also in New Zealand and the Ukraine and Africa and everywhere on the planet.
Yeah, I like that. And that does make sense. Let me jump right into a big question. What is the definition of a dream?
Well, a dream is the usual definition of a dream is the experience we have when we're asleep of being in another time, space, or dimension. So there are waking dreams, however, as well as sleeping dreams. So our waking dreams can include things like experiences of deja vu and experiences of synchronicity, and in a milder way, those light spacing out states like highway hypnosis. You're driving along and you've missed your exit 10 minutes ago and you didn't realize it, and then you say, "Oh well, who's been driving the car for the last 10 minutes then? Where have I been?" So that's a dreamish state. And we have a continuum of consciousness from being fully wide awake to being fully sound asleep, having REM, rapid eye movement, REM sleep, which is where our deepest nighttime dreams are. And in between, we have the states I already mentioned, as well as we have hypnotherapeutic states, we have trance states, and then those in between waking and sleeping zones between when we're just falling asleep at night and just waking up in the morning, where we have these dreamish experiences and images that actually come from the same place in our brains, our neurological systems that our nighttime dreams come from. So it's a long answer to the question, but the short, pithy part would be, it's an experience we have of being alive in some other reality or dimension than our usual left brain waking reality, is how I would define a dream.
Okay, that's great, because, I have spent a lot of time dreaming. I think as soon as I close my eyes, I dream. And I'm one of the lucky people who actually can fall asleep as soon as I close my eyes,
That's great.
So for me, it's an everyday thing. I remember my dreams pretty much every morning that I wake up. And it took me a long time to kind of harness that. And I love when you were saying about the connection between dreaming and trauma, because if it's one thing I've noticed over the years of coaching is that a lot of people will say, "Oh, I had this messed up dream," and there they are sitting in front of me about to unpack some ideas. And I would love for you to say more about that, and also kind of address the issue of where do we actually go when we dream, because I'm sure there's a whole lot to that,
So the answer to that is not sort of a simple answer. It partially depends on someone's spiritual belief system. It partially depends on how someone, what their relationship is with energy psychology, with time travel, with other dimensions. So some people would say we're connected with the all power of the universe when we're dreaming. So we're able to travel through other time, other space, and other dimensions. And one of my teachers actually said, this is the definition of sacred time, when we're able to be now and we can be in the past or the future simultaneously. So when we're able to hold that, then we're in sacred time. So one way of thinking about all dreams is that we're in sacred time when we're having a dream. So some of our dreams are pleasant, are delightful, are fun, are sexy, are enjoyable. And those are not dreams that are connected with trauma. as a general rule. And then we have a whole category of nightmares, some of which are not connected to trauma, that are connected with sort of normative developmental issues in the life stage, that are connected with medications or food or other things that might, or little minor upsets that we wouldn't necessarily call trauma. And then the big ones, the capital T trauma and the capital N nightmares, are the ones that are generated from trauma. And we know that when someone has a trauma response, among other things, one of the symptoms of having PTSD or being on the just post-trauma, even if it hasn't developed into a disorder, is they have intrusive thoughts and recollections into their daily life of the traumatic events. It just kind of pops into their consciousness and intrudes. And that kind of intrusive recollection of the event is sometimes what shows up in our nightmares. So for some people, the traumatic nightmares are simply a replay of the events that happened to them. And for other people, the traumatic nightmares are more couched in metaphor and symbol and image. And then we have to do some work, an additional layer of work of unpacking the meaning and connection of these symbols to what happened to us.
That was a great answer. I'd love for you to kind of unpack that concept a little bit more. You know, how you said there's a capital N nightmare and, you know, capital T trauma, things like that. What's the difference between a little happening, let's call it that, a little happening in our life, you know, an event, and we dream about that, and maybe we're still dreaming about that years later, and maybe we think we're over that thing, or maybe it's a big trauma with a capital T and we think we're over that. We still have recurring dreams, and maybe it's a person from that event, or our mind pieces together a setting based on fragments of that place, or things we smelled, or you know what I mean, like things like that.
Yes.
What's that all about?
Sure. So the way to tell the difference between a little N nightmare, I've never actually used this phrasing before, so this is fresh off my brain right now, and a capital N nightmare is really has to do with the, what we call the emotional narrative that goes along with the dream. So there's the storyline narrative of the events and the people and the location and sort of what happens in the dream. And then there's the emotional narrative that goes hand in hand with what you're dreaming about, that has to do with what are our emotional responses to the things that are happening in our dream. So if our emotional responses in the dream are we're happy, or we're excited, or we feel at peace, then it's not a nightmare, it's a dream. If our emotional response is starting to get over into the negative emotional responses, that's where we can call it a nightmare. And to differentiate between a big nightmare and a small nightmare, there's a scale called the SUD scale. It stands for Subjective Unit of Distress. And this is used in a lot of body-mind therapies and in energy psychology. And it's very similar to what happens if you go to your doctor's office and they say, rate your pain, right? 0 to 10, how bad is it? So it's kind of like rate your emotional distress, 0 to 10. So if the emotions in your dream are, let's say you're dealing with the emotion of fear. So one end of the spectrum that might be like a 1 or a 2 or a 3 is you might be a little bit apprehensive, or a little bit tentative, or have a little bit of anxiety. That's one end of the fear spectrum, where you might be rating it as a 2 or 3 on the upset scale. The other end of where you'd be up there with an 8 or a 9 or a 10 is when you rate your fear, and it's terror, and it's dread, and it's you're shaking, and it's a whole embodied terror feeling. So, and anywhere in between is sort of, there's the subjective part. Do you call this a bad dream, or do you call this a nightmare? It kind of depends on how big your upset is in the dream.
Yeah, I find that it's really easy to want to judge a dream, be like, oh, that was such a terrible dream. And a lot of the times people go directly to dream symbology. They think that maybe just finding a symbol, maybe like an ocean or something, decoding that's going to help them get to the real matter that's creating the dream. What about things like that? Because I've never found anything like that to really help me so much decode the message of my dreams,
Mm-hmm. So all of those dream dictionaries that are out there and all of those this means that, they have a little bit of value because we do share cultural connections and we do share cultural frames of reference. But they're also not helpful in that every dream is idiosyncratic to the dreamer, him or herself. So you have your own compendium, if you will, or your own sort of set of images and symbols and what they mean to you in connection with and in relationship to your life and your associations that are different than anybody else in the entire world. So you can look up, if you have a dream about an ocean, you can look up on any number of websites or any number of wonderful books, like, what does it mean if I dream about an ocean? And they can give you a few ideas about what it might mean. But the only true meaning of a dream for the dreamer is when you personally have that aha. When you go, oh, that's it. That feels right. It's like that bone knowing, that frisson of recognition that you get in your body. So you could dream about an ocean and I could dream about an ocean. They could be two completely different dreams, right? If your dream about an ocean was, I'm down at the shore and the waves are lapping at my feet and the sun is shining and I feel really good, I can't wait to go swimming, that's one kind of dream. But if I'm down at the shore and the waves are lapping at my feet and all of a sudden the wind picks up and large tumultuous waves start coming in and it feels like a hurricane is approaching and I'm starting to get scared, it's the same ocean, but it's two different dreams. Right? So it really has to do with our emotional resonance and then our own particular associations. You might have an association with the ocean where you live or where you grew up, and I might have a completely different association if I live somewhere else. And maybe once I had a near drowning experience, or maybe I love swimming and I'm a great swimmer. So the near drowning experience and the great swimmer experience, if we dreamt about oceans, two completely different dreams, based on our personal life experience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, we do kind of assign our own meanings to events when they happen. Isn't that true? So why would it not be the same for our dreaming state, where we interpret something through the filter of that which we already know, and we kind of end up with a muddled this over here and this over here, and we have a very strange dream. Sometimes I feel tired when I wake up from dreams. What's that about?
Oh, sure. Well, you were probably very, very busy in your dream if you're waking up tired, or you were slaying monsters or outrunning something, or just really having a good time perhaps, but you're just exhausted afterwards. But the purpose of dreams, right, is related to how we understand them, because dreams help us make sense of our life and our inner world. They help us process things. They help us metabolize things that we've experienced either in our day today or in the past few days or from a few years ago or generations past on occasion as well. So dreams are very personal as well as connecting us with the world at large. So we always want to start with the personal connection and your personal associations to the symbols and the characters and the events in the dream. And then once you've gotten the aha, oh yeah, this reminds me of that, or this seems to be about that, or this is connected to this in my life, then we can go on and explore the symbol and metaphor for potentially deeper and additional layers of meaning as well.
That's great. So what about dream journals? There's a lot of chatter about that, especially on the internet these days. And I find when I'm talking with clients or friends or whoever, And they tell me they've tried to keep a dream journal, but it's been too difficult or too time consuming for them. And they haven't gotten anything out of it because maybe they've looked at the connections between certain things that recurred in dreams, and they just haven't been able to figure that out. What are we all doing wrong here with that? What I'm sure that there has to be a protocol for things like dream journaling that we must follow in order to get the maximum results, in other words.
Yeah. Well, there isn't. So the easiest thing to get the maximum out of your dream journaling is to value your dreams. Right? To start with, if you are of the belief that your dreams are here for a reason, to bring a message to you and potentially then to help others in the world as well, then you'll put value on your dreams and you won't say, oh, it's too time consuming. So that's step one, is if we value them. Two, if we have a hard time getting them down, we have to be prepared. Right? Nowadays, I know a lot of people don't want to write out in a dream journal. I'm old fashioned. I still write it out by hand, but you don't have to write it out by hand. You can record it into your phone. You can type it onto your device. It's not cheating to do that. It's really okay. And a simple format for journaling your dream is you put the date when you wake up on that page, and then you write down a few keywords, right? If you've had a really long, involved dream and you have the time, by all means, write down all the details you possibly can, because then it'll be juicier and richer and there'll be that much more for you to work with. But if you don't have the time, write down a few key words or a few key phrases, and then later, when you have the time, go back and fill it in, right? Because that way you're at least honoring the process. And if, like many people, we wake up in the morning and we know we've had a dream or many dreams. Actually, we all have 5 to 7 REM cycles every night. So we have 5 to 7 dreams, but we only remember the ones, generally speaking, just before we wake up. But if you wake and it's like, oh, I had a dream, I can't quite remember it, there's a few things you can do. One is simply write in your journal, had a dream, honoring the process and marking it. 2, if you wake up in an emotional state that is not part of your immediate environment, like if you wake up inexplicably anxious or inexplicably delighted or inexplicably afraid for no apparent reason in the place you're living right now, that was your dream. Write that down, the emotion. And then finally, if you do have the time and you want to try to recapture your dream, one little trick that I find it amazes me every time how powerful it is. It's called positional memory. So let's say you got up, you're taking your shower, and then you go, oh, I had a dream, but I didn't write it down. Get out of the shower, dry yourself off. You have a few minutes, go back to bed, lay back down and put your body in the position that it was in when you were sleeping. And more often than not, your body in this positional memory will remember the dream for you, and then you'll be able to capture it and write it down. So these are a few ways to work with dreams. The other thing in terms of journaling is when you have a dream, I recommend to people, don't try to interpret it while you're writing it down, because then you mix up what happened in your dream and what you're thinking about when you wake up. So just get the unfiltered, unadulterated, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, or this was the landscape and here's the characters and this is what happened. And then once you've captured the dream, then either right away if you have time or later on in the day or the next day, whenever you have occasion, go back to that dream and then start saying, okay, what are my associations here? What might this be about? And a quick kind of Reader's Digest version for people who are in a rush to get something is if you sit with your dream and allow yourself to think of a title for the dream. Don't think too hard. Let it kind of come up from your gut and let yourself be surprised. The title will often capture sort of the Reader's Digest version of the core meaning of your dream for you. And then you take off from there.
Well, I am going to go back and read Modern Dreamwork after this interview, and I have to finish reading PTSDreams. And I have to say, what you said, it resonated with me on a level, because what happened to me years ago is that I used to write my dreams down and stuff like that. But then it's not that it wasn't working. It's that my day got more packed with things. And instead of doing that, what I actually do now is when I wake up in the morning is, first of all, I start my day off with gratitude. Before I even open my eyes, I stretch and I kind of, say I'm so grateful to be back in this plane for another day.
Yes.
And that allows me to kind of stay in bed and still remain in that space between that dream and waking and things like that. And what I'll do is I'll remember that I was dreaming, because I'll know I just came out of a dream or something. And I will then cycle through the memory of that dream. And I will ask myself questions about that. And then throughout the day, I ask myself questions about what I remember from that. And I'll just be doing something mundane, and I'll be like, that's what that was about. Okay.
That's right.
So I find that I've gotten a lot more resolutions to things from that by doing
that's
that
great.
way.
Well, clearly you're a person who values your dreams, so you allow yourself to go back and revisit them periodically in the day rather than just push it away. So A, that's terrific. And B, particularly when people have scary nightmares, nobody really wants to hang out in the fear. So the tendency is to try to push it away or not think about it or outrun it. But actually, if we have things that happen to us that we haven't fully come to peace with, if we haven't fully metabolized to make sense with, if we can't think of them as something that happened in the past that no longer haunts us in our present, we have to finish resolving it. So we need to go back and put our attention on those scary nightmares, but to do it in a safe way. And that's part of the Gaia method that I have created to work with scary, traumatizing nightmares in a way that lets us start out in safety, and let us start by going very slowly and carefully with our helpers, right? Like Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers, right? So we first look for the helpers and we set that up as part one of the protocol. And then we go and we address the terrifying aspects of our dream in a slow and careful way, so we don't keep just pushing it away and pushing it away.
Yeah, you're right. I do value my dreams. And I would like to encourage anybody listening to this to please value your dreams, because it's stuff you're missing out on and that could really enrich your life. And to that, I have to ask, what about the people who say, oh, I never dream, or they just aren't able to remember their dreams? Do you think that ignoring your dreams leads to stagnation in your life?
Well, I think, first of all, that there are people who say, I never dream. We know that that's not true from a neurophysiological standpoint, right? Because we've had people in sleep labs with the little electrodes on their head. And we know that everybody dreams every night. However, not everybody remembers their dreams. And that goes back to the valuing. Do you want to remember your dreams? Do you believe that it's important to remember your dreams? For starters, the amount of time you sleep could affect that. If you're sleeping less than 5 hours a night, you're going to have a harder time remembering your dreams because you have less REM cycles. And God bless the people who can sleep 5 or less hours a night and be ready to go the next day. That's not me. I'm happiest when I can get my 8 hours. But if you want to remember your dreams and you're not, spend a little time with your journal before going to sleep at night and simply write a sentence, or if you want, write a paragraph or a page, inviting your dream muse to visit you in the night. It can be very generic. You can say, please come and visit me with a dream. And I promise to honor that by writing down as much as I can remember. And this is a process called dream incubation. And you can also incubate questions that you have about a specific issue or dilemma, whether it's a creative block or a relationship conundrum or a work-related question or healing from something that's distressing to you, you can spend a little time journaling about that before going to sleep, and then end that little journaling with a question where you're directing your dream muse in that direction. And there are some people, right? There are left brain people and right brain people. There are thick boundaried people and thin boundaried people. And neither one is better or worse than the other. They're just different styles of living in the world. So if you have a desire to have your boundaries be a little more porous and to be able to let in these visitors and visitations from the night, then you have to practice doing that if it doesn't come easily to you. Just like anything else we practice, right? If we want to, get strong, we don't start lifting 50-pound weights. We might start with 5 or 10-pound weights and then gradually build up. So I would apply the same idea to sort of priming the pump and getting ourselves in practice for remembering dreams, if that's something that we'd like to do and we haven't been able to.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I have uncovered so many personal insights just by paying attention to my dreams that it has helped me in my business. It's helped me in my family life, relationships. It's fantastic. I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't want to go through your dreams at this point. Even though I remember being resistant to it at first, I was kind of like, I don't want to do that. But then I gave it a shot, and years later, I love it more than anything. Sometimes I have these amazing dreams where I'm like, man, I have to go back to Earth now. Like, I have to come back to this plane. So, I really do love dreaming. And, I gotta cycle back to something else you said first before I move on to this other question that I've been burning to ask you. It's about physiology in dreams. What role does physiology play in dreaming, and what other biological factors influence the quality of dreams?
So when we are in a dream state, we are using different parts of our brain physiologically than when we're not in a dream state. So when we're in our regular awake analytic mode, we're doing a lot of work with our prefrontal cortex. That's our thinking brain, if you will. When we are dreaming and asleep, we are more connected with our what we would call our instinctual brain, our limbic system, our animal brain, where is the seat of the emotions. And there's also a connection with the part of the brain called the orbital frontal cortex, which connects our visual system with our thinking brain and then links back into our emotion brain. So when we're asleep, there are certain parts of our brain that are literally offline, so that we don't, for example, as a general rule, get up and run around and enact our dreams, though occasionally people who struggle or enjoy, depending, with sleepwalking, don't have enough of the neurochemical that suppresses the motion of acting out our dreams. But usually parts of our brain are offline when we're asleep and other parts are online. And the parts of our brain that are online are parts we can't access as easily when we're awake, right? So when we're sleeping, we can access these deeper layers of consciousness, this collective unconscious that Jung talked about, our unconscious selves, both Freud and Jung and all of the dream research and theorists say there's a large part of our brain that we don't know exactly what it does or how it works. But in our waking active life, we are only really using about 10 to 15% of our brain. So what's all the rest of it doing? That's what we can access when we're asleep and connect with information that we have somewhere deep inside us, but we can't access as well when we're awake. Our waking sensor, if you will, goes to sleep with us, and then we can access the things that the sensor had been keeping at bay during our waking life.
Yeah.
So you had two parts of the question. Part was physiology, and then the other part was what else affects our
what
dream?
are the other biological factors that influence the quality of dreams?
Sure. So our age and life stage, right, where we are sort of developmentally. Like with children, for example, there's a normative life stage where kids often will have nightmares. So somewhere around latency age between 5 and 8, or sometimes younger, it'll be a normative thing for kids to have nightmares. It doesn't necessarily mean there's trauma in their life. It's simply that they're little and everyone else is big and people are telling them what to do. So they feel disempowered and like they have no self-efficacy. And guess what? It's true. So they have the nightmares in the closet and the boogeyman under the bed. And then as we move on through life, we also have hormonal changes. Adolescents, wow, they have wild and crazy dreams because their bodies are undergoing so much change. Women who are pregnant talk about incredibly vivid, crazy dreams because of the new hormonal flood in their body while they are in their pregnancy. What else can affect our dreams? Things that we've eaten, medications that we're taking or that we're not taking. If we are like weaning off a medication as well as going on a medication, that can affect our sleep. And then there's all the recreational substances that people have been using, across cultures and for centuries in order to get vivid dreams and in order to gain access to other dimensions and other worlds, whether they're awake or asleep. So if someone is using a recreational drug when they're awake, chances are pretty high that that'll still be in their system when they go to sleep and can affect their dreams as well. So these are just a few of the other things. But besides traumatic life events or simply things that have happened to us, what's called the day residue, right? The things we did today or yesterday just kind of show up in our dreams. I'll just give you one fun example. Sometimes something that's actually happening in the moment can infiltrate our dreams. So one time some years ago, I was sleeping and I was dreaming about an earthquake. And I was feeling like trembling and then the earth was shaking in my dream. And I wasn't terrified, but it was a very unusual dream for me. I don't usually have that as part of my dream metaphors or symbols. So when I wake up, what do I find? Outside my house, there's somebody with a jackhammer digging up the street to fix the sewage system. And literally my house was shaking because of the jackhammer, and that sensation infiltrated itself into becoming an earthquake in my dreams. So that kind of thing can happen too.
It's kind of like when you're on the phone with somebody before you fall asleep and whatever you talked about, you end up dreaming about that,
Sure, it's on your mind. And so you're still processing, right? Our dreams help us process things that we are ruminating over or enjoying or, chewing on again, whether they're happy things or interesting things or upsetting things.
Now, I can already hear my listeners going, oh no, here he goes. He's going to talk about it again. But I am obsessed with the subconscious mind. And I know that the subconscious is like a scanning device. What is the role that the subconscious plays in the creation of these events that we experience in dream time?
Well, the subconscious can be defined in many different ways. And partially it's contained within the boundaries of our body and our skin. And it's the part of our self that we have either suppressed or simply we're too busy during the day to pay attention to. And when our waking mind is quieted at night and our body is quieted at night, then it's like opening the door, opening the portal for all these other aspects of ourself to come up if we pay attention to them. And depending on some people's belief systems, our subconscious mind also can connect us with other people, other dimensions, and spiritual beings. So some spiritual and religious traditions say that dreams come from the divine, for example. So that would mean our subconscious is connected to the divine. And again, depending on your spiritual belief system, if you believe that we are creatures that contain a divine spark, if what makes us alive is part of our relationship with God, however you would define or understand who, what they are, then that's both inside of us and outside of us. So we get to access that part of our being as well. And we could call it our subconscious, and it might be. We also can connect when we're asleep with people that we care about, whether they're alive or have passed over to the other side. When we have that energetic connective bond, they can come through at night in our dreams as well to share information with us, to comfort us, to give us a chance to make peace with them. It was a difficult relationship that we have. So a number of different possibilities.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And maybe I should talk about dogs in dreams because
Sure.
I have had a couple of experiences recently. One was a dream with Vinny. He's now dead. I used to live in a house in Pennsylvania with a bunch of roommates and stuff, and the house dog's name was Vinny. And I cared for Vinny. I fed him, bathed him, took him for walks and stuff like that, whereas he wasn't getting any attention. So we had a very close bond. When he died, I was living back here, and he came to me in my dream to let me know that he had died. And then I have another dog who passed away earlier this year, April of this year, and he was with me for almost 12 years. And he came to visit me just to check in and let me know that he was doing okay on the other side. And then 2 years ago now, I kept having a recurring dream about a black wolf that would kind of attack me whenever I went into my aunt's yard. And
into where?
Into my aunt's yard.
Oh.
Yeah. And what happened is I kept having a dream over and over, and I kept pondering, well, what does this mean? Like, I don't feel like this is connected to anything in my daily life. And eventually I wrestled it to the ground. And when I wrestled it to the ground, it disappeared. And it seems as though taming that black wolf was directly linked to getting a black Akita in this lifetime, because a couple weeks later, she had a litter of puppies and she asked me if I wanted one. And there was this tiny little black Akita, and he looks everything like a little wolf mixed with a bear or something.
Oh.
And she's like, do you want him? I was like, heck yeah, I want him. And so I wonder if, we piece together bits and things, like we pick up on these things. And it's like, if we can kind of slay the dragon, so to speak, in the dream, we unlock potentials in this reality that we can experience, and or grow from and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, because you are apparently a delightfully thin boundaried person, your departed beloved pets have an easy time visiting you, to say, hey, I'm fine, or I still love you, or I'm still thinking about you, and to let you know, in pet language, people talk about when the pets go over the rainbow bridge, right? And I love animals. If I could have dogs, I would, but my husband's not so much of a dog person, and there's a lot of responsibility. But we have cats. So I have cats, and they show up in my dreams all the time. But it sounds like your dog Vinny, and then the dog who passed in just past April, that you had such a close connection with them, and you still do, that it wasn't stopped. That connection wasn't ended when they passed from their physical body. So you're having that experience of being connected with their spirit, which is so lovely and so comforting. And then this dream about the wolf. So it's really interesting because I don't know. You said it was in your aunt's yard?
Yeah, it was in her yard. Yeah. For some reason, I would just drift over into her yard in the dream. I would be drawn to that space. And as soon as I would enter through the gate, I would be attacked by this big black wolf.
And at what point in those dreams did you wake up? Were you injured at all in the dreams or not?
No, I would never get injured in a dream. Like, I would run away from it at first. And then I had to work my way up to it and realize that every time that happened, I need to turn around and actually face this thing to see what happens, because there's been a lot of other instances in dreams where I felt like I was being chased or attacked or something. And it was only when I turned to face the attacker that it would kind of be like, oh, and, sometimes I would end up chasing the attacker.
So you have discovered and have been able to do, either on your own or with your friends or family, you have enough inner resources so that you had the courage, really, to turn and face the wolf and whatever else has been chasing you. Sometimes we need help to turn and face that which is chasing us and which is attacking us, which is where this protocol of the Gaia method, guided active imagination approach, might come in. But you did it on your own, right? Something was chasing you. And I would ask you, and at some point, you realized, you have to turn and face this or it's never going to stop chasing you, right? So we name it to tame it, right? That's what Alan Siegel says. He's a Buddhist psychologist. We name it to tame it, and we have to turn and face our fears to find out, why are they chasing us? What is the message? What are they trying to tell us that we're running away from? Because generally they come bearing some kind of a gift, but we don't know it yet when we're afraid. So I wonder for you what your connection is with a black wolf. Like, do you have any associations to wolves in general or to black wolves in particular? We know one of the end results is you got this adorable little puppy dog out of it. But I think there's something about a black wolf or a wolf dog that is like a totem animal for you. I'm wondering about that.
That's very curious. And I mean, once I tackled that wolf and it disappeared, I felt a huge sense of peace in the dream. Mm-hmm. And it stood out to me when I got the puppy, because I named him Shiloh. And as you would know, you would know what the meaning of that name is, right?
I don't.
It's he who brings peace.
Huh.
Right? So I wondered what that was about. And I wondered if it wasn't a physical representation, perhaps, of maybe something to do with retaining inner peace, or something like that. I've not quite been able to figure out. It's been 2 years.
Well, the word Shiloh itself I didn't have a resonance with, but when you translated it from, and I'm not sure what the language is, but in Hebrew the word shalom means peace. It also means hello and goodbye. And the El is one of the words for God, like Elohim. And we think about the angels, like Michael is Michael and Gabriel's Gabriel. So Shiloh has like the shalom and the El in there. So I can understand why it would mean he who brings peace. What language is Shiloh, or is it your own personal?
So that's what I got from looking it up on Hebrew stuff online. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I wonder how I'm spelling Shiloh.
Yeah, Shilo.
Shiloh, shell, and then the love, right? Shell means of. So for some reason, you needed to conquer some kind of a fear that was associated for you in your personal repertoire of symbology with a wolf. And once you could face that, he then became a part of peacemaking in you, and someone, a being who was a guide for you rather than someone you were running from. So that's wonderful.
That makes sense. And I'm glad we went through that example, because that is a very powerful example for anybody listening. That's the power of your dreams. Yeah. Because I have to say this, Akitas tend to have a stigma about being very vicious and uncontrollable and stubborn and things like that.
Interesting.
And he is the exact opposite of that. So it's kind of very odd, actually, that he would be such a loving animal, the complete opposite of what his animal nature should be,
Well, somehow I think, Jahan, you drew that in, right? You drew in this loving, peaceful dog that was sort of the opposite of his animal nature, because you conquered whatever the fear was that had to do maybe with your animal nature or any sort of aggressive part of you that you needed to tame and bring peace to and get to know better so that you could then have this lovely dog in your life.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And so, piggybacking off of that, what about precognitive dreams?
Yeah. So that's where we, when we talk about dreams can help us connect with sacred time, that's dreaming around the corner of time and space into possible futures. So we won't know if a dream that we've had is precognitive if we haven't written it down and remembered it. So here's another shout out for recording your dreams. We probably all have precognitive dreams. And in the Talmud, they talk about dreams being a portion of prophecy. All of the prophets had prophetic dreams. And in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, people are having prophetic dreams all the time. We have prophetic dreams too. They're not always earth-shattering. You could have a prophetic dream that someone that you haven't spoken to in a while is going to call you, and then lo and behold, they call you the next day, right? That was a prophetic dream too. But if we don't remember our dreams, we don't know if they were prophetic. So we pay attention, and if we're paying attention to them and they had a prophetic nature to them, we get to be prepared for things that are happening in our future potential selves that we might not have been prepared for otherwise, to take the steps we might need to prepare for whatever we dreamt forward in time might be happening.
All right. And with that, Linda, I will say thank you for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. This has been fascinating. I feel like I could talk with you for another 2-3 hours about this.
Wow. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really glad we could do this. Yeah,
we will have to do another show because I'm sure that questions will come in and I'll be like, I don't know, I better ask Linda.
I'd be happy to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being on.
You are very welcome. Thank you for having me, Jim.